Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Cameron is the one that is 100% responsible for Breonna Taylor never getting her day in court. And even this particular trial that's coming up, it's still completely inappropriate to what should happen. Now, we know it was a lot of police officers at that location when Breonna Taylor was killed. And we remember it was three officers that shot into that apartment, but only one is going to trial with felony charges. You can smell Daniel Cameron's ass all over this. Okay, so far Breonna Taylor really have not gotten any justice for what happened to her. So now Brett Hankinson is facing felony charges for firing wildly on the night Breonna Taylor was killed. Jury selection is set to begin this coming Friday. And this is former Louisville police officer involved in a botched police raid that left Breonna Taylor dead. Former officer Brett Hankinson charged with 3 felony counts for allegedly firing his police service weapon wildly into Taylor's neighbor's apartment. Remember the apartment above hers? That was the only thing Daniel Cameron got the cops on. But Breonna Taylor, who ended up dead, nothing. And on top of that, that neighbor didn't die. The bullets went into their wall, but nobody died. But that's what he was concerned about. Okay, so we know Breonna Taylor, she died March 13th, 2020, during that incident where it was a no-knock warrant and they were looking for her ex-boyfriend who was not there. And by the way, when they did catch up to her ex-boyfriend and arrested him, there were no drugs found in his apartment either, y'all. They didn't find drugs at Breonna Taylor's apartment. They didn't find drugs at her former boyfriend's apartment either. So much for their evidence, right? Taylor, 26, a 26-year-old black woman, was shot 5 times by Louisville police. She had been sleeping and bled to death in the hallway of her apartment after police entered her home in a mistaken drug raid. And don't forget, they lied to get that warrant. They lied. Mm-hmm. And they also tried to get the postmaster to go along with the lie, but they would not go along. They said they did not deliver packages, suspicious packages, to Breonna Taylor's home. Okay, that's another thing they tried to push. Hankinson is the only officer to face charges in the case, although he did not fire the rounds that killed Taylor, and he is not charged in her death. 250 potential jurors are scheduled to gather at the Louisville courthouse on Friday to fill out questionnaires before being selected to hear evidence in Hankinson's criminal trial. The jury selection process is expected to take 2 weeks. Taylor's killing by police sparked street protests in Louisville and helped propel nationwide Black Lives Matter protests that rocked the US in 2020. Yeah, I remember, and Trump was all upset over those protests. I mean, think about this. Trump was upset over the protest that broke out in 2020. Many of you remember this, but he was not upset about the insurrection. He was, and people died. People died, and he was not upset about that. But people protesting the death of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, he was upset about that, and he even wanted to use the military to stop the protest. And no military was used during the insurrection, which was much deadlier than the protest out in the streets in 2020. All right. A rare criminal proceeding against a police officer will draw national attention from activists seeking police reforms, which don't work. You can reform. I've been hearing about reforming the police, I can remember even as a child. They've been talking this reform forever, and nothing ever changes. The policing out on the streets is all the same. Nothing changes. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, at one point in time, people were talking about defunding the police, right? So now they are struggling to find recruits, and many of them are now leaving. I say this karma is about right. It's all in the hands of the Most High. So there have been murder convictions and only 3 other racially charged cases that fueled the 2020 protests. In November, 3 white men were sent to prison for the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, a black jogger in Georgia. And I was listening to his mother. His mother said he loved to run. That was because she's also a runner. But she said Ahmaud always, he just loved to run. For former police officer Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22 years in prison for killing George Floyd. Kimberly Potter was found guilty for manslaughter in the shooting of Dante Wright. But Hankinson's upcoming trial may be the only criminal case that arises from the deadly raid on Taylor's home. The Louisville officers were serving a no-knock warrant as part of a series of raids targeting a specific suspect, drug dealer, and former boyfriend of Taylor, where they didn't find no drugs at his apartment either. Do you know how stupid y'all sound? Y'all swore up and down, drugs, drugs, drugs. Oh, she's in on it too. Didn't find no drugs over at her house. Didn't find no drugs over at her former boyfriend's house. No drugs found anywhere. Ooh, serves you right. But he was not with Taylor that night. Now, they're talking about her former boyfriend. When she was raided, he wasn't even over there. And police found no drugs or cash in her 2-bedroom apartment. The warrant police used to enter her home was later found to be flawed. Yeah, because they lied to get the warrant. Okay. See, you can't do shady shit in law enforcement and expect people to believe you when your story unravels, you know? But see, we got people in this country that will hear this and still, based on who he is and what he is, they'll still support him. And it just goes to show you, many in this country don't care. They will overlook every lie the police tell, and as long as the person looks like Briana Taylor, they're good with siding with him, even with the lies and flaws and everything in the case. So these folks can't come and preach to anybody about morals. You can't. You don't have a leg to stand on preaching about morals or following the rules or following the law. The very people that don't do any of those things want to get on a soapbox and preach to you. Country full of hypocrites. Okay, so during the raid, Hankinson went to the rear of the apartment and fired 10 shots through Taylor's patio door, according to an FBI ballistics report. 3 of the shots went through a wall that connected a neighbor's apartment, and one allegedly whizzed by a neighbor's head. Yeah, they didn't even take into consideration that there were people living there, including children. Whatever the verdict in Hankinson's trial, it is likely to disappoint Black Lives Matter protests who took to the streets of Louisville for months to say Taylor's name. Arrest the cops who killed Brianna Taylor was a common refrain. Yeah, and it got largely ignored by Daniel Cameron. He saw the protests out there. In fact, he reacted to a lot of the criticism about him. You know, two former officers who fired shots that struck Taylor have not been charged. That's Miles Cosgrove, who state investigators said likely fired the fatal shot. He was fired in January along with fellow detective Joshua James, months after Hankinson was forced out. And Jonathan Mattingly, who was wounded in the leg by a bullet fired by Taylor's boyfriend. And I don't believe that either. I think they were shooting wildly and they shot the cop that was with them, Mattingly. Because I remember I read the report and they said that bullet did not match Taylor's boyfriend's gun. That bullet didn't come from his gun. So if it didn't come from his gun, it had to come from another cop. Boy, they botched this thing up bad, real bad. Okay, so they let John Mattingly, y'all, retire. His butt should have been jailed. They are definitely people who want to see some form of justice and will take any piece of that. All right. Hankinson's trial is a piece of that, but it is not the original thing we set out for. We're asking for all of those officers to be fired, arrested, and prosecuted. Following the protest, Louisville banned the use of so-called no-knock warrant. Yeah, because y'all were using those no-knock warrants for anything. Now, if it's something real serious, that's one thing. But they were using those warrants for any and everything. And I don't believe there should be any no-knock warrant anywhere in the country. Okay. The Louisville Metro Police Department underwent a regime change after the raid, and there is a continuing broad federal investigation into probable racial biases within the department. Oh, you think that's there? That's all over the country in all police departments. Okay, not just there. The city paid $12 million to settle a wrongful death lawsuit brought by Taylor's mom. Okay. Hankinson's trial is not for justice for Brianna, said Amber Brown, who joined hundreds of days of protest in downtown Louisville on the behalf of Taylor. Nothing that's going on in the courtroom has anything to do with Brianna, Brown said. He's being charged with the bullets that went into her body. If convicted, Hankinson, listen to this, for killing Brianna, faces 1 to 5 years in prison for each for 3 wanton endangerment counts. The criminal justice system is the most criminal thing in America, you know. And you know what the funny part? These cops don't do nothing but go on the streets and slaughter people in our community, right? Whether you're armed or not, it doesn't matter to them. But these folks in their minds think, oh, well, if you don't have the police, you're going to have crime. To be honest with you, y'all, I think we would be safer with the crime. I'm serious. You may think I'm crazy for saying it, but we may be safer with the crime. We're already around crime all the time. It doesn't matter what neighborhood you're in. Even these folks that think they're in good neighborhoods, a lot of crime going on there too. You're already around a bunch of crime. So which would you prefer? The crime, or being around somebody that's going to shoot you over anything? Stupid shit. At this point, give me the crime. Okay, give me the crime. Been living around it all this time anyway. Crime is everywhere in America. Everywhere. No place is excluded. Okay, so the charges were the only criminal indictments issued by a special grand jury. Yeah, and we know Daniel Cameron was the one heading that. Mm-mm-mm. You can't trust anything from Daniel Cameron. He's damn near more corrupt than the police. The outcome was controversial, and some members of the grand jury later explained that they were kept from considering harsh charges for the other officers. Yeah, Daniel Cameron, with his sneaky ass, talking about they could have raised that issue, but you didn't present that issue in front of them. So you're still 100% at fault, Daniel Cameron, raccoon. So, y'all, please tell me what you think. This is a load of BS. Wanton endangerment. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.